And as campaigners tell this programme exclusively that protests will start again outside primary schools this term against the teaching of controversial relationship education, we are going to replicate a lesson in the studio live this morning with the book which is used to teach children about same-sex relationships.
Out came their very own baby. She had fuzzy white feathers and a funny black beak. Now Roy and Silo were fathers. We'll call her Tango, Mr. Gramsay decided, because it takes two to make a tango. Roy and Silo taught Tango how to sing for them when she was hungry. They fed her food from their beaks. They snuggled her in their nest at night. Tango was the very first penguin in the zoo to have two daddies.
Now that lesson, that's an extract from a lesson that is taught to 9 and 10-year-olds in primary school in England. But today, head teacher Simon Kidwell's audience is not a classroom full of children, but parents and activists and educators here in the studio and you across the country. So you can decide for yourself what you think of these lessons. Campaigners have told us that they intend to resume their protests outside primary schools this term against the teaching of relationship education. Last school year, groups of mainly Muslim parents held regular demonstrations outside 2 schools in Birmingham where children had lessons that included LGBT issues. There were smaller protests in other parts of the country. Now, one of the programmes available to schools is called the No Outsiders series, which teaches primary-age children about different types of relationships. Some of the protesters object in particular to one of the books. It's called And Tango Makes Three, which is about 2 gay penguins who raise a chick together. Well, today, here in the studio, live, we're going to replicate a primary school relationships education lesson that uses that book to let you know the facts about what's in it. Simon Kidwell is head teacher at Hertford Manor Primary School and Nursery in Cheshire. Now, he's introduced the books in his school and he's kindly agreed to come into our studio today to teach you the same lesson that 9 and 10-year-olds in his school receive. Also with us, we've got a studio full of parents, teachers, authors and activists. Now, first of all, Simon, good morning. Thank you very much for doing this lesson for us all here today. Now, you've brought a selection of some of the books that are used. There are 35 in total. How many of the 35 have same-sex or trans themes?
There's approximately 5 books out of the 35 that explore those themes.
Right. And what is the point of these kind of lessons?
I think the point is actually, first, we want children to know that families have different shapes. And we also want children to know about that great British value of tolerance. And tolerance is where we accept people who are different and we respect people who actually disagree with us.
And would you invite parents to look at these books before you begin teaching these lessons to your kids?
Absolutely. When we introduced the scheme, we invited all the parents in to a meeting where we shared not just the books, but also the lesson plans, because there's detailed lesson plans that go with it. And we would ask the parents about the questions that they are concerned, and we'll also let the parents know when it's being taught. So if there is a conflict between traditional religious beliefs, they can talk about that in their home when we've done the lesson.
OK. Right, you're going to give us and our audience here and our audience across the country a lesson that you would give to your pupils. You'd give them to Year 5 at primary, that's the second to the last year in primary school, featuring one of the most controversial of the books, And Tango Makes Three, in your own time, I think is what they say. Thank you very much.
Hello, class. Right, we're going to look at a book today called And Tango Makes Three. So have a quick look at the front cover and tell me what you think it might be about.
Penguins.
Penguins, great. So, 3 penguins, that's great, that's we have one. Would it surprise you if I told you this book is banned in some countries? Some nodding heads there, yeah. It is banned in Singapore, it's also banned in Hong Kong. Any clues on the front cover about why it might be banned?
Because they know it's an underlying agenda. That's what that book is about.
Sorry?
That's why it's been banned in those countries. It's been banned.
So should we read the book and go and find out about that?
Sir, isn't it a true story?
It is based on a true story in Europe, but let's go and read the book and we can go and find out. OK. In the middle of New York, there was a great big park called Central Park. Children loved playing there. It has a toy boat pond where they can sail their boats. It has a carousel to ride on in the summer and an ice rink to skate on in the winter. Best of all, it has its very own zoo. Every day, families go to visit all the animals that live there. But children and their parents aren't the only families at the zoo. The animals make families of their own. There are red panda families with mothers and fathers and furry red panda cubs. There are monkey dads and monkey moms raising noisy monkey babies. There are toad families and toucan families and cotton-topped tamarin families too. And in the penguin house, there are penguin families. Every year at the same time, the girl penguins start noticing the boy penguins, and the boy penguins start noticing the girls. When the right girl and the right boy find each other, they become a couple. Two penguins in the penguin house were a little bit different. One was named Roy, and the other named Silo. Roy and Silo were both boys, but they did everything together. They bowed to each other and walked together. They sang to each other and swam together. Wherever Roy went, Silo went too. They didn't spend much time with the girl penguins, and the girl penguins didn't spend much time with them. Instead, Roy and Silo wound their necks around each other. Their zookeeper, Mr. Gramsay, noticed the two penguins and thought to himself, they must be in love. Roy and Silo watched how the other penguins made a home. So they built a nest of stones for themselves. Every night, Roy and Silo slept there together, just like the other penguin couples. And every morning, Roy and Silo woke up together. But one day, Roy and Silo saw that the other couples could do something they could not. The mummy penguin would lay an egg. She and daddy penguin would take turns keeping the egg warm until finally it would hatch. And then there would be a happy baby penguin. Roy and Silo had no eggs to keep warm. They had no baby chick to feed, to cuddle and love. Their nest was nice, but it was a little empty. One day, Roy found something that looked like what the other penguins were hatching, and he brought it to their nest. It was only a rock, but Silo carefully sat on it, and sat, and sat. When Silo got sleepy, he slept, and when Silo had finished sleeping and sitting, he swam, and Roy sat. Day after day, Silo and Roy sat on the rock, but nothing happened. Then Mr. Gramsay had an idea. He found an egg that needed to be cared for, and he brought it to Roy and Silo's nest. Roy and Silo knew just what to do. They moved the egg to the centre of their nest. Every day they turned to it so each side stayed warm. Some days Roy sat while Silo went for food. Other days it was Silo's turn to take care of their egg. They sat in the morning, they sat at night. They sat through lunchtime and swimming time and supper. They sat at the beginning of the month and they sat at the end of the month. And they sat all the days in between, until one day they heard a sound coming from the egg. Peep, 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 it said. Roy and Silo called back, squawk, squawk. Peep, peep, answered the egg. Suddenly, a tiny hole appeared in the egg's shell, and then, crack, out came their very own baby. She had fuzzy white feathers and a funny black beak. Now Roy and Silo were fathers. We'll call her Tango, Mr. Gramsay decided, because it takes two to make a tango. Roy and Silo taught Tango how to sing for them when she was hungry. They fed her food from their beaks. They snuggled her in their nest at night. Tango was the very first penguin in the zoo to have two daddies. Soon, Tango grew strong enough to leave the nest. Roy and Silo took her for a swim, just like all the other penguin families. And all the children who came to the zoo could see that Tango and her two fathers were playing in the penguin house with the other penguins. Hooray, Roy! Hooray, Silo! Welcome, Tango! They cheered. And at night, the three penguins returned to their nest. They snuggled together, and like all the other penguins in the penguin house, and all the other animals in the zoo and all the other families in the big city around them, they went to sleep. So, we've read the book. Now, what do you think this book is about?
Happy families?
Happy families. Any other things? Yes?
Manipulation, corruption.
Where was that?
Very disturbing.
Did you just hear?
That book.
And the unbalance of life. Because two fathers cannot, a child cannot have two dads.
Okay, well,
the most important thing about the story, those two penguins couldn't produce their own egg.
That's based on a true story, though. So
for me, actually, I think we're losing the point when we just focus on the penguins, actually, because for me, the book is that we have all got that intrinsic desire to love and be loved. And that's what the book's, and that's what the book's about.
Penguins were good parents, whether they were same-sex or not.
Yeah, definitely.
But the fact that he had to steal an egg that we don't know where it came from, somebody was missing an egg, nobody discussed
Again,
where the
I don't think we need to go into the mechanics of the zoo story, but actually, I think it's the overarching. Well,
we have to, because we know the truth of this.
Sorry, gentleman. Can I listen to the gentleman at the back?
The truth is, as I said earlier, there's an underlying agenda to this.
I don't know
what the whole book is.
I don't know what the author was thinking when they wrote that book, but I know the underlying agenda in my school is about teaching tolerance. And
it's nothing to do with tolerance. It's not to do with tolerance.
And it's about teaching, let me finish.
It's promotion of LGBT lifestyles.
The teaching in my school...
And that's okay. So what's the problem with an LGBT lifestyle?
Because you cannot promote it to other people's children in form of a book. The person stole an egg based on their feelings. They said that two eggs were in love. Where did that come from? That's someone's feelings, and then they decided to steal an egg and give it to two people.
I'm going to swap for a second, Simon, may I? As in a normal classroom, you would not be allowed to talk all over each other. But clearly we can hear some objections. We can hear some people who think it's absolutely fine, the way it was taught and the content of what was taught. Nigel Evans was just about to speak. He's a Conservative MP. He's a Conservative MP who is gay. Did you have any issues with the content and the way it was taught?
No, but I might have done 30 years ago, but we've moved on since then. I've changed my views completely. I didn't come out openly as gay till I was in my 50s. When I was growing up in Swansea, I wish I'd been introduced to lessons just like that, and a lot of my friends.
Why?
And it may well have been that I would have come out openly as gay, not thinking that there was something wrong, that I would have frustrated or hidden my feelings, which are absolutely natural, which are portrayed in that book. And sadly, we've heard a few views this morning which seem to suggest to me that there is something wrong in somebody who is either lesbian, gay, or of some other natural feelings. And that does disturb me. And I'm not surprised, Simon, that those books are banned in some countries, because I've talked to a lot of politicians from a number of countries where it's illegal to be gay. And that is absolutely bonkers in the 21st century.
Let me bring in Karen. Are you moved by how Nigel Evans has described the way he had to grow up? And it took him until his 50s before he was able to live openly as a gay man?
Because it's not natural. It's not the way of life. The way of life is a man and a woman.
So you're not moved at all by the way he felt he had to hide his true self?
No, I'm not, because I wasn't brought up that way, so it's not natural.
May I ask a question?
Yeah,
please?
sure, go ahead.
What would happen if one of your children, I presume you're a parent,
Yes, I am a parent of
were
three.
gay? Would you want them to hide it? Would you want them to wait till they were 50 and possibly be suicidal, self-injurious?
If I'm being honest, I think, yeah, I would want them to hide it.
You'd want them to have
if
mental
they
health
were
issues due to hiding it because of your religious beliefs? Would that make you a bigot then?
No, it wouldn't make me a bigot. It's just what the Bible states. It's what my belief, what my home belief is. If they were to come to me and to say that they are, I would instruct them that's not normal. That's not way of life. It does not reproduce. Two men does not reproduce. Two women does not reproduce.
But they can make very good parents if given the chance.
Yeah, and also there's plenty of heterosexual couples that are obviously male and female that can't reproduce naturally, and they then they adopt kids and they become parents.
But in a natural form.
Yes.
Well, how's it natural?
Because then it's
some
mom
parents
and
are
dad.
Hang on, don't all
Some
speak over each other. Sorry, Saskia, go on, and then Izzy, you respond.
So the fact is, parents are parents. parents, you're talking about a natural form, but if someone's going to become a parent, if you can't naturally reproduce, have babies, then you can still adopt kids, and there's plenty of parents out there that are happy, loving families that have adopted kids that are still great parents, regardless of their gender or their sexual orientation.
Well, it is.
So,
Because that's
You're
kind
giving
of
a balanced, but you're giving children a balanced view of what it would be naturally. So you're giving a child a mother and a father, as it should be.
Okay.
But also, I just want to address quickly, in the term of always asking about what would you do if your child is gay, what would you do if a child who has been raised with two fathers or two mothers turns around and says, why did you not give me a mother or father?
Yeah.
Because that's not the way that...
Well, I can tell you that my son has two mums, and my son is one of the most happiest kids I know. Obviously, I'm biased because he's my son.
But have you never asked about a father?
I'm going to move it on. I'm going to move it on.
But parents are parents regardless. So if you come from a happy, loving family,
if
you come from a happy, loving family, that is the most important thing. And
Okay, ladies, let me move to the back row. Do introduce yourself, sir, if you would. And you and your wife took your sons out of school to homeschool because you objected to a trans child in the class. Your name?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm Nigel, and I'm Sally.
I'm Sally, actually.
I think I want to make something clear here, that, you know, in the media, they sort of ban these things about Christians being bigoted and homophobic and what's that.
No, can I ask you, sorry, Nigel, I want to bring it back to today.
Well,
what did you think of that lesson?
Well, I can see exactly what it's about. That lesson, really, is about indoctrinating our children, which we should have the choice to decide.
In what way indoctrinating?
Indoctrinating into the LGBT lifestyles that we as committed Christians don't actually... We have a biblical value, the gold standard, which is marriage between one man, one woman.
When you say indoctrinating, do you mean encouraging them to become gay, encouraging them to accept that gay people exist?
Definitely. Those books, all those books there, which I did look online and have a look at them, when I read them, I recognised that there was an underlying agenda to push this agenda. Yeah. Okay, in children.
I just want to spell it out exactly what you're saying so I'm clear.
Yes.
To indoctrinate them to what?
To believe that it's normal.
It is.
You're trying to normalise.
It's
trying to normalise.
No, it's not normal.
Look, it's the science is there. You need a male and
we're not going to go into the science. So hang on a minute. Wait, whoa. Stop, please. Stop, please. Thank you. I want to bring in Ollie. You're a young gay man. You have written some of these books. I just want you to react to when you hear someone say, it's not normal. How do you respond to that? And let's be respectful here this morning.
It's absolutely normal for me and half this room probably. Actually, what this is about, it's about saving lives. We know that LGBT plus related bullying is the most common form of bullying in UK schools. We know that 1 in 5 LGB students and almost half of trans students have attempted to take their own life.
And why would these lessons reduce those numbers, do you believe?
Because once children are taught about LGBT plus bullying, then the bullying goes down in the school.
You know
this. Statistics. I know this from Stonewall School Report.
Yeah, I know this.
Yeah,
Can I just add to that? Sorry, because I also know I work with Ollie sometimes, and I'm an LGBT plus educator in schools and the workplace as well. So I work with so many young LGBT plus students and non-LGBT students who once have had education and awareness around LGBT plus families and lifestyle and people in general who are, by the way, just regular human beings. That we do see, even Ofsted have reported in many of the schools, that actually statistically homophobic, biphobic, transphobic bullying has been reduced and has gone down.
You mentioned Ofsted. Ellie Spitzer, welcome, head teacher of a school which has been rated inadequate by Ofsted because you don't teach these relationship lessons, and in their view that is letting down the pupils. It is failing in an element of their development. It's an Orthodox Jewish school. Why don't you teach relationship lessons?
I'm really glad you asked. Actually, in the Orthodox Jewish community, there is a completely separate issue. Parents in a part of the Orthodox Jewish community, commonly referred to as the Haredi community, don't want their child's school to discuss anything remotely related to sex or sexuality. And this is actually, the LGBT side of the argument is a complete red herring, because they just don't want to go anywhere near sex or sexuality. And even Simon's lesson, which I very much enjoyed, parents in my community would object to it. Even the phrases such as slept together or falling in love, regardless of whether this is a homosexual relationship or heterosexual relationship, is not something that they want their child's school to discuss. Now,
do you think your parents, and do you, actually as a head teacher of this school, do you accept that everybody, according to the law, has to be treated equally?
Of course, most definitely.
Right.
And I think,
the follow-up question to that is, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Spitzer, do you accept then that if you don't talk to primary school kids, 9 and 10-year-olds, about the fact that different kind of family units and same-sex relationships exist, then it makes it harder for those same-sex relationships to flourish?
No, I don't accept that. Funnily enough, the new guidance, which many will be implementing from now, which comes into effect in September 2020, actually clearly states that schools with a faith character are allowed to teach their own religion's opposition to homosexuality. But they should also teach that we should be respectful and tolerant. Here's the thing, Orthodox Jewish schools
is that not a contradiction?
Just a minute, let me finish. Orthodox Jewish schools choose to do neither. They don't actually. We censor our own biblical verses that oppose homosexuality because parents do not want their schools to discuss sex and sexuality at all.
Yehudis, is this the same in all Orthodox? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. That's Tana. Yehudis, is it the same? Is this the same in all Orthodox Jewish schools? Because your kids go to one, don't they?
Yeah. So my children go to Orthodox schools where they do discuss sex and sexuality, heterosexual, homosexual relationships. I haven't heard any opposition from the parents.
I mean, just to be clear, what goes on in primary schools is nothing to do with actually having sex.
No one's talking about the mechanics of sex.
Yeah,
We're talking about what different types of families.
So it is taught in your kids' school?
Yes.
And it's an Orthodox school?
It is.
Right. And is that okay with you?
That's absolutely, yeah.
And do you understand what Ellie Spitzer is saying? Some parents don't want any discussion about anything in primary schools.
I'm very familiar with that kind of setup.
And is that acceptable?
Well, no, and I think there's a couple of points I want to pick up on. Ollie, you said that it's about safeguarding, and that's what I would come straight back to. For me, this is not about bullying that might or might not occur in the playground. This is about the children themselves, and there will be a percentage of the children in every school who are themselves LGBTQ. Those children need to be safeguarded, not necessarily even from bullying, because if children don't know what it means to be gay, they're not going to bully other gay children. But I'm talking about children who are likely to be pressured into early marriage, which is always going to be heterosexual. I'm talking about, children who just never see families that look like the families they could have, children who feel suicidal, children who are self-harming.
Okay. Sue emails this.
Sorry, can I just
really
respond
briefly
to that quickly? That this is not an issue necessarily for schools. This is you take issue with the way parents choose to bring up their children. It's for schools to be the educators, for parents to bring up their children.
Yes.
If the school doesn't have a mandate from parents to discuss these issues, then schools should stay well away from that.
Exactly.
And I also just
no, that's enough now. I'm just going to read some... No, hang on. Excuse me. Saskia, thank you. I'm going to read some messages from...
Protests shouldn't happen outside.
I'm going to read some messages from people who are watching and watched Simon Kidwell's lesson around the country. Sue on email says, I guess that the story of the penguins is a positive starting point, but my 8, 9 and 10-year-olds' knowledge and experience is way ahead of this. John tweets this should not be taught as long as some parents do not want it taught to their children. Leanne on Facebook says, acceptance and tolerance absolutely needs to be taught in schools from an early age, especially where the parents seem incapable of doing this. It's disgusting that demonstrations like this are happening, and I really hope that the schools do not back down and give in to bullying. This texter says, as a mum and a grandmum, I know that children will learn about different types of relationships at school, whatever we do. My question is, do we want them to learn in the classroom or in the playground? In the classroom, they can be taught in a sensitive, respectful manner. In the playground, they may learn bigotry, intolerance and hatred for people who are different. Let me bring in Amir Ahmed, father of 7. None of them now, actually, at primary school. I think the youngest is just about to start secondary. You've been pretty instrumental in some of the protests around a couple of primary schools in Birmingham. Are we going to see much more of those protests this term?
What I find quite incredible...
Sorry, if you could just answer that question.
Yes, there will be protests. And the reason being is that, Simon, an educationalist, he's read this book, and there's a clear ideological message for 4-year-old children in this book.
It's not read to 4-year-olds.
9-year-olds.
This book is designed, and Mama, Mummy and Me, and other books, and they start at 4-year-olds. We have had 2 mums. We have had 4. Yes, that's right. 2 mums. That's right.
My son's got 2 mums.
Hang on.
The Mama, Mummy and Me is a lesbian couple raising a child.
Let's just talk about the book that our audience across the country and you here today have heard read today, because then they know what we're talking about.
It's about same-sex families, right? And the message is the same. We have had children come home saying, we want 2 mums. Because of the teaching, these are young children, 4 or 5 years old, and it's confusing children. And this is an ideological, I mean, the No Outsiders program, which is what these books are
What's
from.
What's the ideology? Describe it. What is the ideology?
Well, let me tell you, Victoria,
Please.
that it was a £500,000 project funded by the government, No Outsiders.
To do what?
And it was how to... the researchers in this project, if you read the reports, they're talking about how to query the classroom.
How to what?
How to querying the classroom. It's a theory that...
Querying?
Querying.
Yeah. Meaning what? What's querying?
Exactly. I didn't know what this term meant, and this term...
Querying?
Querying, that's
Make
right.
kids gay?
Making
so paint feather boas and vocalise.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand this. Sorry.
Well, yes, not quite making, but introducing ideas at a young age, where then children grow up and they find and they accept this sexual and gender ideologies.
Right. So Nigel Evans, it's your government that's making this compulsory. I can see that you're laughing at what Amir has said.
It's not compulsory.
When I was growing up,
this is not compulsory.
From next year, it will be compulsory.
No, it's not. Actually, it is Ofsted, the teachers' union, and the head teachers' union that are pushing this, and they're interpreting legislation in their own way. And it's the radical left that are pushing this.
Okay, the radical left, including Conservative MP and Brexit Nigel Evans.
What really sort of mystifies me about all of this sort of attitude is that when I was growing up, all the messages that were being sent to me, whether it was officially or unofficially, was that if you had gay feelings, there was something wrong with you, and you had to suppress that sort of thing. I've got to say, even growing up as I did, you would think actually that
you're a member of Parliament, right? You should have found out more about what's happening in the protests, right? In fact, I as a campaigner, right, will not accept anyone who is homophobic in my campaign.
But your campaign is homophobic.
Let's bring in Karen Qureshi. Why do you... Hang on. Don't talk over each other. I'm so sorry. This is the rules of my classroom now. I'm so sorry. Why do you say it's homophobic? Why is it not simply parents like Karen, like Izzy, good parents, who simply want to take their children away from this kind of lesson because it's up to them how they bring their children up when it comes to relationships and family units?
I respect that, but at the same time, their actions...
Well, why are you calling them homophobic? So you don't really...
They are homophobic because they're denying our existence. They don't want to face up to it. They don't want to face up to what they call an LGBT lifestyle. First of all, what is an LGBT lifestyle? You know, I am who I am and that's it. But in terms of their actions, they're constantly at the gates of Anderton Park Primary and at Parkfield, chanting homophobic words, saying, let kids be kids, and also we don't want our kids to be taught gay. That's the premise of your protest.
You haven't said anything that's homophobic. I mean, what have the protesters say that's homophobic? And you're saying that we're not accepting you. We are accepting you as individuals. It's your ideology that we don't accept.
We don't have an ideology.
These are values, family values that you have.
No, let him speak.
He's spoken enough. But what I'm saying is, as Muslims,
as an individual, we do respect you.
And then I'll come back. Right, you speak now, please, Karen.
Within religions, aspects of religions, it talks about accepting people for who they are, how they come about, and all the rest of it. And within the Muslim community and within Christianity, that's the ethos that we're brought up with, either culturally, traditionally, or otherwise. You're supposed to be there to respect people because we're, at the end of the day, according to religion, we're brothers and sisters.
Okay, and let me ask you a question. No, let me ask you a question.
I've always treated Kakan with respect.
What was it like for you, Kakan, growing up as a gay Muslim kid?
Well, I grew up with my... I'm the youngest of 7, and I grew up and I had to hide it. It impeded on my sort of development, impacted on my mental health. I was incredibly shy and anxious as well. And I had to learn to find my voice to become who I am today.
Okay, so. I can see Izzy behind you rolling her eyes to heaven as you describe that. Why, Izzy?
Time and time again, we keep on hearing yourself and you talking about your experiences. This isn't about you. This is about our children.
We're not a child.
But we're not stopping you. We're not stopping any child that identifies with LGBT. What we're saying is our children. These are our children that we want to raise within our beliefs. We want them to go to school, receive an education, the same as you did. We're not denying that. What has your experience as a child got to do with our children?
Okay. I'm going to bring in Rosie, who's not spoken, and then I'll be with you at the back.
Yeah, I just feel like, you know, they're happy, they're happy for their children to learn about other religions, I'm guessing, which also goes against your beliefs. But I do feel like you're singling out the LGBT community here.
You haven't asked. If it was down to learning about another religion, I would do that as well. I would withdraw my child from learning.
But we've been learning about religion for years. Like, you know, my daughter's already been learning about different religions.
LGBT is not a religion.
Okay. Yeah, but are you happy for your children to learn about other religions?
Yeah.
If I was asked and if I saw what was being taught and I didn't agree with it, I would want that opportunity to remove.
So you're saying you don't want your child to be educated on anything else but what you believe?
I want my child to go to school to receive an academic education. It shouldn't be to go to school to learn about what other people do in their homes or whatever else.
Let's move to the back, and then I want to bring in Sally, who's not spoken. Yes, go on.
Thank you. I run an organisation called Autistic Inclusive Meets, and we have obviously a lot of autistic children. We have children that come in that are trans, that are gay. And these kids have had to leave school, a lot of them, because of the ostracisation, because there's no education and their peers aren't taught acceptance. You know, and these kids are self-injuring, they're suicidal. I've had a mum message me yesterday whose son committed suicide 4 months ago because he was gay, because he was not accepted.
Okay,
so for you to be saying
hearing that, that is very sad and very poignant. How do you respond to that?
So I'm a mother and a teacher.
I'm a home educator, by the way.
And I, thank you. And I think it's so important that we do show respect for every child, that children are learnt that bullying is totally out of order, that we do need to accept that there are differences, and we have compassion. But this is, I also think it's so important that we protect children's innocence and their purity. And so,
what's not innocent about that book?
Well, the problem is that it does actually cause confusion. If I'm a 10-year-old boy and I'm saying, "Who's my best friend?" It's going to be a boy at 10.
Yeah.
Why? No, your best mate is a boy. You love hanging out. Troy, you love doing. And so therefore, I'm gay.
Troy, you're a head teacher.
Confusion.
You asked what is not innocent about that book. What else would you like to say to Sally?
Well, I would like to actually know what you find offensive about a picture book, because actually there's a group of 35 books that we use there.
Yes.
A proportion of them have some LGBT themes. But in a school, we've got thousands of books. And some of these children don't have representation in those thousands of books. We need to give everybody representation.
I want to bring in Thana, because we're coming to the end of the programme. You haven't spoken.
My issue is like completely unrelated to everyone else. My issue isn't the fact that it's being introduced and the way it's being introduced. Like, you know, everyone should have like tolerance, for the way that they are. However, my issue is that by trying to promote equality for a certain sect, you're kind of infringing on the rights of another community, which is the parents. I want to be able to. I was brought up in a all-Muslim household where it was being homosexual was, not right, and it wasn't okay. I've grown up to have, gay friends. I have members of my extended family that are gay. I'm very tolerant of them. I think the issue is the parents teaching the children to be decent, tolerant human beings, and not necessarily the schools being sort of in charge of how they're introducing the idea of homosexuality.
We are coming to the end of the programme. Hang on a minute, we're coming to the end of the programme. I'm just going to read a couple more comments. Karthik on Twitter says, good on BBC Two and Victoria Live team for doing this. This is something you would never see on television in the US, for example. George says, I'm a committed Christian on the high Anglican faith. I'm a bi man with many LGBT Christian friends. I'd like to point out that the vast majority of Christians have a sensible, non-radical view of the Bible. Thank you for giving up your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. We're back tomorrow at 10. Have a good day.